And the KZN Cogta has beefed up emergency operations ahead of expected heavy rains in the northeastern parts of the province. The South African Weather Service has issued level 4 and 5 weather warnings for this weekend. The department says it has established and coordinated a joint operations center to manage the looming weather threats. It says the operations center will serve as the focal point for all disaster management interventions. Now, for more on the fires, we are joined by Dr. Raeesa Moolla, who is a climate and environmental specialist at Wits University. Doctor, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it this evening. And as we know, it is fire season. We've heard from those previous packages as well. And we do know that certain parts of our country do experience these kinds of fires at this time of the year. But, Doc, would you say that it's gotten worse?
So I think it has become a lot more prevalent than before, and that actually is becoming a problem. So one of the main issues is that we're having much more frequent extreme weather events, which is one of the reasons that we're seeing more events of this. So specifically when there's heat waves or long periods of droughts, for instance, then we are noticing an increased amount of wildfires, specifically in the Western Cape.
You know, you mentioned the heat waves as well, and I wanted to ask you what the cause is. Before we started this interview, there's a Kruger acting municipal manager who was saying that it seems that some of these fires are suspicious, that some of them may have been started intentionally, that they may be deliberate sabotage. What do you think about that?
So yes and no. I mean, deliberate is always something that could be occurring, right? Because that's sabotage. But when we're having these extreme weather events where we're having heat waves, especially at the moment where there's a lot of drought conditions in the Western Cape, what happens is that the conditions are very dry. The winds are perfect for carrying the felt fires, and they can spread very quickly. With the heat waves, the temperature increase is so drastic, and there's very little precipitation. There's specific wind conditions, and those are known to cause very intense wildfires. So it's not only in Western Cape. You will notice that it's more often occurring also in San Francisco, for instance. So all the western coastlines are actually experiencing an increase in wildfires over the recent years.
Would you say that there's something a little bit more sinister? You know, there are those who are a bit suspicious of the number of these fires that we are seeing.
So I wouldn't be able to comment on that from a climate perspective, but if it's occurring in specific areas or areas that maybe with the, municipal elections coming up, it could be something that has to be looked at from that point of view.
And if you could just also give us advice when it comes to braaiing as well. You know, South Africans, we like a good braai. But a lot of the times in such conditions, residents are also warned not to braai. Yeah. How does that also play into this?
So with the braais, it actually becomes, especially with the Cape flora, if the wind picks up or the wind carries any of those flints or any of the ash that's still hot, you actually can have wildfires very, very quickly. So with braais, it can become very dangerous. Make sure that it's in open areas, there's not a lot of dry grass around, and you're not near an area that is susceptible to wildfires. And I mean, Cape Townians, I'm sure, are very aware of which areas are hazardous for these wildfires in the Western Cape in general. So if you know you're in an area that's very common to have wildfires, make sure that you are in an area that when you're braaiing, it is maybe isolated from these wildfire areas, and that you take precautions, especially when wind picks up. Cover your braais, especially when you move away from them, and that you are done overnight. Do not leave them outside in an open area where the wind may pick up a lot of the ash and the hot cinders.
Yeah, and Dr. Moolla, climate change is a real factor, and we're seeing these kinds of fires in other parts of the world as well. You also mentioned San Francisco. I know there's also fires in Australia. How big of a contributing role is climate change, if you can elaborate on that?
So climate change will play a role, because what also happens is not just the temperature regimes are changing. So we are seeing temperatures of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius increasing across the globe, and especially in coastal areas, this has become a big risk. But with it is that our El Nino and La Nina cycles are more intense as well. All our cyclonic events are more intense. So climate change has a big role to play in this. The wind systems also are affected. So these will play a contributing role to wildfires and the advancement of wildfires. Also, in order to mitigate and stop these wildfires once they start, will become harder each time we have more wildfires.
Should we, as South African, take some solace that they haven't caused the kind of damage that we saw in 2017, for instance, with those Knysna fires, that there were also fatalities there and far more destruction to property?
So yes, we can take solace because the loss of life is always very tragic. But the problem with these wildfires is that we also lose a lot of flora and fauna that is essential to reducing climate change and keeping our temperature regimes low. So as much as we can take solace that there is no loss of life, it is still affecting people, just maybe in a different way.
Dr. Moolla, I really appreciate your insights on this very crucial conversation. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.